Hello friends, so before we start I just want to say don't worry, I'm okay, I'm fine, but I did have a skiing accident last week and I have damaged my knee a little bit. Or a lot, I'm not really sure how much yet, we'll get onto that. So I just wanted to explain a bit more about what happened, like what actually happened in the accident and what's happened since, mainly because a lot of people have been asking. So I'll start at the beginning. This was a skiing accident, so obviously it started with me skiing. Why did I even say that? That's obvious. I was skiing along. The slope was pretty bumpy. Like, I wasn't struggling or anything. If you don't know, I'm a really good skier. I mean, just putting that out there. No, like, I'm a very competent skier. I've been skiing since I was 4 or something ridiculous. So, like, I know what I'm doing. It wasn't because I was out of control. It was just one of those things that just happened. The slope was pretty bumpy and I remember thinking to myself, this is quite bumpy, and then I just fell. So let's put it like this. I'm skiing along, these are my skis. Who doesn't love a good demonstration? So then my left ski gets caught in the snow a bit here. I'm feeling a bit wobbly, and then I'm thinking, right, okay, I'm gonna fall. So this is me straight down the slope. I was kind of then going to turn to the left a bit, and obviously I didn't want to fall forwards down the slope, so I kind of consciously leant back. It's all about making sure that you fall well. It doesn't really matter if you fall as long as you fall in a way that means you don't hurt yourself. So I was thinking about falling in a way that didn't hurt myself. Obviously that didn't happen because I fell. And as I was on my way to the ground, I was then thinking, I'm going too fast, I'm not going to stop. So I fell on the ground and I kept moving. This bit was then a bit of a blur. I couldn't obviously see what was happening because I was the one in the situation, and I don't remember feeling a whole lot. Like, I think I was on my back at some point. A couple of times I had the distinct feeling that I was upside down, so I was obviously, like, my head pointing down the slope and I was kind of travelling backwards. The main problem was that my skis didn't come off, which they're meant to do to prevent you injuring yourself anymore, but something about the impact I fell at, or you know, something was wrong and they didn't come off. We were going down this blue run, which was kind of a narrow path. I'm doing the hands again, I'm sorry. I feel like this is helpful, sorry if it's not. So I'm going down this blue path, just kind of like wiggling along, and there's also this red run that's a bit steeper and they join up together, and then I kind of veer off the side and I end up on like this little bit in between the two runs. So I mean, I stopped in a great position because I was really out of the way. So I kind of went off the edge, which I guess was also good because it meant I actually stopped. Oh my god, just talking about it is making my knee hurt again. Okay, I'm gonna try and explain what actually happened with my legs for it to get damaged, but if you're a bit squeamish or you just want to skip the slightly more graphic description, I'll put a time here that you can go to once I've stopped. It's not going to be like majorly disgusting or anything, but yeah, just in case. Somewhere along the way my right leg ended up over my left leg, so left leg, and then my right leg kind of ended up over here. But if you don't know, your ski boots come up to like just under your knees, so they keep the whole calf area straight, but I guess because my right leg was then on the wrong side, kind of like I'd crossed my legs, the way the doctor explained it to me after with the ligament that I've damaged is that my leg would have kind of tilted like outwards, and then that's why there was damage. So I'm guessing what happened was the bottom half of my leg stayed straight while the top half kind of twisted out. The professionals afterwards keep asking me whether I heard a pop or anything. I'm like, I don't remember hearing anything except the sound of my own screaming. Yeah, I fell, and you know when you have a nightmare and it kind of feels so surreal and you know that it's like not a real experience. That's what surreal means. Why am I over explaining this? I had that feeling when it was happening. It was almost like I blacked out, but I didn't because I was still there. But it was just that pain was kind of all I was concentrating on for those few seconds, and it felt like that sort of feeling you have when you're in a nightmare. I mean, luckily that moment was over really quickly. I say really quickly, it didn't feel really quick at the time. I remember just screaming as loudly as I could. It was kind of reassuring in a way because I have this recurring nightmare that when I'm in a dangerous situation, I then lose my voice and I can't shout for help, whereas the exact opposite happened because I was just screaming my lungs out, and then I ran out of breath and then I just screamed again, and then my mum arrived and took off my skis because she was skiing behind me, and she was kind of saying Emily, are you okay? What's wrong? And I just remember gasping and being like, I think I broke it. I think I broke my leg. Because I've never broken a bone before, so I didn't know what to expect, but I was thinking I must have done something, because like that was not fun. Because I ended up on my side. Why am I doing this? I ended up on my side and my right leg was over my left leg, so my left leg was underneath. That's what that means. And my parents came over and they kept being like, can you move your left leg? I was like, the left leg isn't the problem, because they thought it was the one that was trapped underneath. I got them to move my right leg so that it was back on its original side, and that meant that I could just sit backwards on the ground. But something felt really weird. I can't even explain it, but I knew that there was something not right, and my leg was just really hurting. Like the whole calf area was really, really aching. And I was thinking, well, I've done something to my leg. Some other people stopped and asked me if I was okay, and I was kind of a bit flustered, and I was just like, yeah, even though I wasn't okay, because I mean, what were they gonna do? It was this whole group of people. But it was really nice of them to stop for me. Mum and Dad got me to try and stand up, and immediately I was like, this is just not gonna work, I need to sit back down. Then they were asking, do you think you can ski down to the bottom? How bad is it? Do we need to call someone, or can you get to the bottom of the slope? I looked at them and I was like, no, I can't ski to the bottom of the slope, like I can't stand up. But then I guess it's called like a pista, someone who was piecing the slope came down and saw what had happened. Obviously we weren't on the slope, and we'd put our poles and some of our skis like in crosses, so that's what you do to kind of say, don't come over here, there's been an accident. So we had that up, and this man came and stopped and asked if we were all right. So luckily we didn't actually have to call anyone, because then we kind of explained what had happened, and then he said, oh, you need snow patrol, so he called snow patrol, which did make me laugh a bit, but that's apparently what they were called. Also, from here on I'm probably going to be putting pictures in, because I got my mum to take photos while it was all happening. My sister didn't come out with us that day of skiing, so I was like, oh, this is something that she's obviously going to ask about when we get home, let's take some pictures so I can show her what happened. So I was like grinning in all the pictures like, hi Becky, look at the fun I'm having in a stretcher. So this man came down, and then once he arrived he realised that we needed a stretcher to get me to the bottom, so he called his friend or co-worker or whoever to come bring down a stretcher. Xavier was apparently the name of the man who the snow patrol man who came down first. I don't remember this, I don't remember being told at all, but Mum and Dad seemed to remember, so let's go with that. He had a really impressive beard, that's all I really remember about him. Oh, and that while we were waiting for this other man to come down with the stretcher, I started to feel really sleepy. And so I talked to Mum. I was thinking, I know that people always feel sleepy when something like this has happened, something to do with the shock and everything. And so I thought, well, there's no way I'm meant to be sleeping, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. So I said, I feel sleepy. I shouldn't go to sleep, should I? And Mum kind of looked a bit alarmed. She was like, no, you have to stay awake. So then naturally I started singing Stay Awake by All Time Low. And then Xavier was just looking at me like, probably thinking what's going on. But then he told me in French, like, oh, you have a nice singing voice. And I was like, oh, thank you. I think maybe he was surprised that I understood, I don't know. Because apparently later he told my dad that I was clever. And my dad was like, yes, she is. But kind of thinking, where on earth did that come from? And, you know, why do you think she's clever? How do you know that? And it was all a bit random. So then this other man arrives with the stretcher, and oh, I don't think I mentioned they put me in one of those full blanket things. It was like gold. I'll put a picture in here. I mean, it was a great fashion statement. I was having a grand old time. So they managed to move me into the stretcher. They kind of picked up my right leg in like this thing, and I managed to shift over with the rest of me into the stretcher, and then they did me all up. And I've also got a nice picture of me in the stretcher with Xavier and the other man whose name apparently Mum and Dad didn't remember, posing for the picture, which I thought was really cute. And then they took me down the stretchers. They took me down the stretcher. Then they took me down the mountain. The man who had the stretcher was skiing in front, kind of leading me and the stretcher and everything, and then Xavier was behind me, and they skied me down the mountain. And it was a little bit bumpy, but surprisingly comfy, and because I could see some of the scenery, like the mountains and the trees, and obviously the man skiing in front of me, I wasn't actually scared like I thought I might be, so it was quite a pleasant experience. At one point I thought to myself, oh wow, I must have just really got used to this feeling of being on the snow, because suddenly it didn't even feel bumpy anymore and I didn't feel anything, and I was like, oh, it feels like I'm flying. And then I felt like I landed or something again, and I was like, oh, maybe I just imagined it. And then later when I was talking to mum and dad, they said that there was actually this bit of snow that was kind of a big bump, and so they both just lifted up the stretcher and carried me over it instead of me having to have that bump, because it might have then hurt me more. So technically I was flying, which I think is pretty cool. Once we got to the bottom, there was a bit more of a wait. Like, it was really efficient, but I got told that we'd have to wait for about 10 minutes for the ambulance because everyone was getting injuries at the same time, which was just great, wasn't it? And there was someone who I guess must have been on the same slope who actually arrived in a stretcher next to me at the bottom while we were waiting. I thought that he didn't have something as bad as me because he could then get out the stretcher on his own, and he kind of seemed like he was doing all right. And then we ended up in the ambulance together. My mum was riding out front, but I was kind of put in backwards because I was lying down on a bed. I couldn't bend my knee or anything. And then this other man was sat in the chair kind of next to me, so we were kind of awkwardly facing each other. And I just remember having this vague conversation about, oh, so why are you here? Oh, it's my knee, you know, why are you here? And he's like, oh, it's my shoulder. And then we just kind of settled into silence. We went to the hospital. It wasn't really a hospital, it had like 3 rooms. I guess it was more of a clinic. I've got a picture of me in the hospital once we've managed to take off like all my salopettes and everything so they could actually look at my knee. And I wasn't so happy in this picture, I think because me and my mum were starting to realise that this might actually be serious. Also, before we went in, the man asked me whether I spoke French, so I kind of just said like, no, I'm English. And then he asked me in English, are you from the Netherlands? And I was like, no. I don't know if my French was just really bad and he didn't understand what I'd said before, or if I somehow spoke French with like a Dutch accent or something. I don't know, but that was kind of weird. So then I was in the clinic and the doctor wanted to examine me, and this whole time people had kept being like, oh, is it your knee that hurts? And I was like, no, it's my leg, because that was my leg that hurt. My knee felt fine. And I kept repeating this to everyone, and by the time we were actually in the clinic and the man said, is it your knee? And he touched my knee in it and it really hurt, and I looked at it and it was like swelling up massively and it was starting to feel really painful, and I just kind of looked at it and went, yeah, it's my knee. I don't really know what happened for me to think that nothing had happened. I looked it up afterwards, which I know is dangerous, but I did look it up afterwards and I saw that sometimes you don't actually feel the pain in your knee if you damage a ligament there or something, because the actual pain tissue is broken. I didn't really understand the explanation, so what I've just said is probably really inaccurate. So the doctor tried to examine my knee. I say tried to because it was really difficult. He couldn't actually do it properly because of the swelling, and because I was in pain every time he was trying to kind of look at a particular part of it, I was flinching and tensing up the muscles, so you couldn't really tell what had happened. I did get an x-ray, which we've got on a CD somewhere. I haven't seen it, but there weren't any broken bones, which is good. And I remember looking at my mum being like, oh, that's great, I haven't broken anything, this is really good. But the doctor was saying he thinks I have a ligament injury, and my mom was a bit nervous, and they were both like, no, Emily, that might be worse. So he then tried to get me to stand up, which again was just not happening. He did kind of say before we attempted it, I doubt you'll be able to do this, but I guess he needed to check first before kind of prescribing me anything else. So I managed to get up on my left leg, and then he was like, right, that's really good, so now step onto your right leg. And I put my right leg on the ground, I put my right foot on the ground, and he was like, okay, so put some weight on it. And I just kind of stood there and froze, and you couldn't tell, but I was trying really hard. I was kind of staring at it like, come on, take some of my weight. And I was just completely stationary, and then you could tell that I was really out of breath and literally nothing had happened, and he just kind of stared at me. He was like, yeah, you're gonna need crutches, alright, let's sit back down. So I got sent home with crutches and a brace. Ooh, where are you going? My cat's in here, but she's not on screen. So I got sent home with crutches and a brace, and before we left I also got an anticoagulant injection which stops the blood clotting. And then because of the way that it works in France, I went back home with the things I'd got at the hospital. We got told the chemist opens at 3, so then once the chemist opened, Mum and Dad went and bought a new pair of crutches and a brace, and 3 injections, brought the brace and crutches and 1 injection to hand back to the hospital to replace the things that I'd used, and then the other 2 injections were ones that I had to have on Saturday and Sunday. He couldn't prescribe anything for after that because I was going back home on Sunday, so couldn't kind of say anything for once I got back to England, and he told me I need to make a doctor's appointment on Monday, have an MRI scan as soon as possible, and get a blood platelets test so that I could make sure that I was still allowed to have the anticoagulant medication, and kind of there were lots of things that we needed to sort out. So we got back home, Mum and Dad were on the phone for ages trying to fix things for the airport to make sure we got special assistance, and booking a couple of extra seats. Luckily the flight was really empty, so I ended up with 3 seats in a row that I could then sit across so I could keep my leg raised, because I had to have my leg up, raised 10 centimetres above my hips, the doctor said, just to help with the circulation and everything. It was kind of good that it happened on Friday rather than the Saturday, because I think if it had happened the day before we left, I'm not sure we'd have been able to go home, because the first 24 hours were the worst, to be honest. Like, I was waking up every hour. It was really painful. I was only allowed paracetamol because ibuprofen could have potentially mixed badly with the injections I'd had. So that was difficult, but it was actually okay because I kind of knew in my head that the first 24 hours would be the worst, and everything that was happening, I just thought this isn't going to be as bad the next time we do it. And that was true. Like, the first time I was doing everything, like trying to stand up even, it was really difficult. But now I can even stand up on my own, like, you know, with the brace and the crutches and everything, without falling over, which is really good. Anyway, I'm thinking I will make a follow-up to explain how my first week of recovery has gone so far, but I'm just going to finish up in this video talking about the journey back home and how we kind of got all that sorted. So we went to the airport on Sunday. We'd made sure we booked special assistance, so Mum and my sister went in to just find the special assistance section. I tried to look it up before, but I didn't really know what we were doing, so I was waiting outside on this bench with my leg up. My dad was handing back the hired car. Handing back? Do you do that with cars? My brain is a mess. He was returning the hire car we had and making sure we brought out the suitcases and stuff, and I was just sat alone on this bench with my crutches, and it was weird because this was the first time I'd been out since this incident happened, and I was only sat there for maximum 10 minutes while everything got sorted. Even just in the time that I was there, I heard some people walk past and like make a comment about me. I don't remember exactly what it was because it was in French anyway, but I just remember kind of recognising that it was something about how, you know, I was sat there and I couldn't walk, and I thought, that's really sad that I've been here for 10 minutes and I've already heard that. It made me feel really bad for people who are like actually disabled and must get that literally all the time. I had this wheelchair in the airport. It was really good. Obviously Geneva is very prepared for these sorts of injuries, so they had this wheelchair that can keep your leg elevated, which was really good. The man who was wheeling me around spoke really great English, but while he was wheeling me over to the check-in desk and everything, everyone was looking at me, and I know it was an uncommon sight. Well, it can't be that uncommon, I guess, but you know, someone just being taken around in a wheelchair, and it was strange because it felt like everyone was looking down on me, because literally they were, because I was sat down and everyone else was stood up. And I mean, I'm all for having the attention on me. I love performing. I like being the centre of attention, especially when it's my birthday and things like that. But this wasn't anything where I deserved the attention or wanted it, so I was kind of looking around like, this is a bit awkward. I was just like, hello, yeah, I'm in a wheelchair. I think I do have a picture of me in the wheelchair next to the bins, because that's where I was parked, so I was out of the way, and I looked at Becky, my sister, and I was like, I'm here because I'm trash. It turns out at Geneva, when you have special assistance, at least for what I had, I got taken through this whole new section. I was quite excited. It was a part of the airport I'd never seen before. You still had security and passport control and all of those things. Everything was just grouped much more tightly together, and then we had like our own waiting room, so I was there with a few other people who were in wheelchairs or just had special assistance for some reason or another, and my parents got a coffee because there was a little coffee machine, and they were impressed that the coffee was cheaper and obviously there weren't any queues. So I kind of came up with this amazing solution of, let's get me 3 seats to sit across and special assistance each time, because that will save us money on coffee. I think the thing I found the funniest about the whole airport fiasco was just the fact that because we had to book a couple extra seats, I was down as Emily on my original seat, and then the 2 other seats were booked as Broken Leg, like it was a first name, and it was like, Miss Broken Leg is now checked in, and I was like, okay then. But everyone in the airport was really, really helpful. I got a special lift to get up to the plane because obviously I couldn't use the steps. I was in there with somebody else who had a knee ligament injury from skiing, and we kind of bonded over it, but to be honest I was really jealous of her because she could bend her leg and she could get around on her own. She was just using her crutches, and she said it didn't hurt, but the doctor seemed insistent that she'd done it, so she kind of had to take these precautions. Yeah, but I mean, that was good for her that she hadn't damaged herself so much, but I was just kind of looking at her like, oh, I wish that was me. I mean, of course, ideally I wouldn't have had any injury at all, but alas, it was not to be. Why don't people say alas more? Alas is a great word. The flight was actually really comfortable. It was nicer than being in the car. I think maybe because we weren't on a road or anything, so it wasn't bumpy in the same way. We weren't on any hard surface or anything. It kind of just felt like sitting on the sofa. So I actually had a really nice flight. Got myself some noodles to eat while we were on the plane because we hadn't had a chance to eat before. Everybody was really kind and helpful. My sister sat in one of the seats in front of me, so if I ever needed anything I could just kind of tap her and annoy her and ask her for it, so that was great. Once we got back to England, the airport we were at didn't have wheelchairs that could keep your leg up, which was a big problem because I could not lower my leg. I can actually bend my leg a bit now. I've come so far since it happened, but at the time, even if it was just slightly lower than my hips, I was kind of screaming in agony. So that's how bad it was. So my mum and dad came up with this amazing innovative idea that they would use some scarves that we'd brought with us to create a sort of sling. I don't think we took any pictures because it was actually pretty painful and we were just kind of focused on getting me through the airport to the car so we could get home. One was around my knee and then one was more around my foot. You can't see where my leg is, so I don't know why I'm demonstrating over here, sorry. I have my leg up now in case you were wondering why I'm sat at this awkward angle. Yeah, so then my dad was carrying my leg, you know, keeping up with the scarves while somebody else was wheeling me along. And then every time he dropped it a bit too low, I just kind of yelled and he lifted it up again. It was a flawless solution, really. But you know what, it did the job. The bags came really quickly, so we got wheeled all the way to the car. I got wheeled, nobody else was in a wheelchair in our family. And then when we were in the car, we had this system because I needed to keep my leg up. So you know there's usually that sort of console unit in between the front 2 seats, like a little bit behind the gear stick and everything. Kind of explained that badly, but that's where I put my foot, and then we made like a mound of bags and cushions and stuff to keep my leg supported, to keep like the knee bit supported. And then because my foot was getting quite cold, like I couldn't put any shoes on it or anything. The only shoes I had were my snow boots, which were quite heavy. Kind of any extra weight on my leg made it harder to move, because at this point I couldn't really use any of the bottom half of my leg. I was like using my hips to maneuver myself. Yeah, so I didn't have it, I just had a sock on, so then I used my sister's bobble hat and put that over my foot just to keep it warm, which honestly looked so cute. And yeah, once we got back, I just stationed myself on the sofa downstairs, and that's the end of the travel journey. As I said, I think I will make a kind of a progress update. As I mentioned a couple times, I'm already improved so much. I don't want this video to be like half an hour long, and I know I've already talked in detail about everything here, so I will stop this for now, but you can expect another video explaining the progress I've made. I think that it will be nice as a personal reminder and not reminder, like a documentation of what's happened, so I can see how quickly I recovered. So anyway, thank you for watching. I would say I hope you enjoyed, but I'm not really sure this is the type of video you enjoy. I don't know, I guess I hope you found it informative. I just wanted to explain a bit more about what had happened, especially for the people I maybe don't talk to as often or can't really see, or people who I don't know in real life who might want to keep up to date with what's happened and want a bit more information. Thank you for watching, and I will see you later. Bye!